Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Inloco MetaTalks live here in the Metaverse and Spatial. I'm Inloco Sharky, the host and virtual ambassador of Inloco Gallery, a hybrid art space rooted in Dubai and expanded across immersive platforms. Today, I'm honored to introduce a bold and boundary-defined artist, someone who has been at the forefront of the crypto art movement before the term even became mainstream. Our guest is VESA, a pioneer in digital art, performer, and thinker whose work merges ancient symbolism with futuristic tools, from large-scale live paintings to NFT drops and immersive experiences. Vesa's practice is as much about ritual as it is about reinvention. He has exhibited globally, collaborated with world class institutions, and developed a visual language that speaks to both the sacred and the digital. So, whether you are here as an artist, a technologist, a collector, or a curious soul, you are in for something truly unique. So let's dive into Vesa's world where crypto meets culture and image becomes experience. Vesa, the floor, or rather the metaverse, is yours. I'd like to start with your background, and you wanted to share the presentation with us, right? And I'd like to ask you to tell a bit about your creative journey, where it all started, and how you found your way into crypto art and immersive practices. And also, you can share a little about yourself, where you're originally from, what brought you to Dubai, and whatever else you want to tell us.
Great. Thank you,
Just
Elsa. It was a
Mhm.
beautiful introduction. Can I ask you to come and introduce me in other places as well?
Yeah, we can discuss it after in local talks. Why not?
So, yeah, I thought if it was okay, I'd give a little bit of a presentation first. It'll be about 15 to 20 minutes, which goes through the whole worldview and how I got here. And many of the questions that you probably have will be answered in this presentation. And after that, it will be a lot of fun to go deeper into some of these topics and the philosophy behind it and all those kinds of things that you might be interested in. But I think if it's okay with you, I'd love to give this presentation. And I'm already on full screen with the presentation here at home. I'm in Helsinki, by the way, in Finland. Giving this presentation, I'm not in Dubai at the moment. And I'm going to treat this presentation, it's an internet presentation, not a local presentation, because there's a couple of things that might be in terms of the UA sensibilities. I'm not 100% sure whether they're going to be agreed upon. So treat this as a finished presentation on the internet.
Mhm.
So the presentation is called Renaissance 360, and it'll become quite clear what that means. And obviously 360 is a reference to that we're surrounded by something and it's all around us, and a new kind of renaissance is upon us, and of course art specific. But what this presentation will go to is how foundationally this all has been about wellness for me. And I think this is a good direction in general for us to focus on, whether you're in art or something else, for a multitude of reasons that I'm going to go into. But first, before anything else, I want to show you a little bit of a show reel of the kinds of things that I'm a little bit up to. Okay, thank you. So, thanks a lot. The foundational principle of my creative pursuits, they really can be summarized by this idea of kintsugi. It's a Japanese old concept that sometimes when you break a bowl, you put it back together with gold and silver lacquer, and it's considered more beautiful because it's been broken and put back together with love, and now it has a story to tell. And it really summarizes the traditional healer's journey, and that usually goes approximately so that something catastrophic happens to you when you're quite young, and you have a natural motivation to put yourself back together again, because it's a do or die kind of situation. And then and it's a brutal thing because not everyone makes it, of course, and there's many sad stories along the way of how that goes. But for those who manage it, they really know that the tools that they put themselves together with, they work, and they have a natural empathy then for the broken, but they have real tools on what to help them with, because quite often we might all only acquire one or the other. We might have a lot of empathy to people, for people, but we don't really know how to help them, or then we know how to help them, but it's not coming from a place of empathy, and both of them are kind of necessary in order to do it properly. And I just think that that kintsugi thing is a brilliant way of how to make good people altogether. All of us are going through a variety of different kinds of adversities in order to get to be who we are. And in my particular case, my parents divorced when I was very, very young. And it led to all kinds of different flavors of things that I didn't wish that happened, or that happened that I there's so many different things that went kind of wrong in my early childhood, that it's I had a lot to fix, and it led ultimately from different kinds of substance abuse to even overworking, and ultimately, after shooting a couple of television series, I ended up in the hospital with collapsed lungs, and my back gave out. I had slit discs in my back, and I basically came very, very close to dying. And I was in intensive care for 3 days, and then in the hospital for 5 weeks, and then for another back operation, and all of this kind of stuff. And that was in 2010, and it was really quite the crawl upward from there. And also at the height of NFTs in 2021, my son was stillborn, and for 5 years with my wife, due to these are some of the sacrifices that I had to make as a digital artist in order to actually still be here after 17 years. 5 of those years I had to live in what was essentially like a bike shed in someone's backyard in London, from 2015 to 2020, because we didn't have any money whatsoever, and blockchain art and NFTs weren't a thing. So the first 10 years of my digital art career were absolutely miserable, due to finances, and finances lead to all different kinds of other things like high cortisol due to stress, and humiliating situations socially, and all of those different kinds of things. But how I was able to pull through all of that and prevail was that I was very focused on truth. And this is why I find it super important to remain as truthful as possible at all times, because that's been quite literally the lifeline of how you get through adversity. Because if the more you lie to yourself, the more you delude yourself, even by telling yourself that nothing is wrong, if you clearly know that something is wrong, that's the quickest road to hell. So art to many people, especially in the West, I suppose globally now, has come to mean something like luxury. It's like for the elites and for mind games and power games and all of this different kind of thing. And it never was that for me. Art was an absolute necessity. I didn't make this because I'm not saying that I don't want status or I don't want money. I certainly do. But that wasn't the primary concern of why to do this. I had to do this and express. And I think the more society embraces this perspective on art that I'm about to share with you as the whole of the journey, we realize that we can't afford to have it as the play toy of the rich, or something that is only a tool of propaganda. We need it for our humanity's sake, for ourselves, and especially now with what is coming up with AI, it's kind of in terms of wellness, it's not only a tool that arrives when we have a crisis, but it's something that prevents crises. And this is the very lofty, practical aim that I would like to see more in art. And all of this perspective and all my troubles, they kind of landed me into having my first proper keynote was in London, actually, at the Biohacking Summit with Teemu Arina in 2016. And that sort of started my not only public speaking, but me talking about the synergy of art and wellness. And he kindly invited me back in Helsinki of 2022, and we even rebranded the whole of the conference, or branded the whole conference with my art for that year. And that was a great honor, and I really loved it, and met a bunch of cool people like Garnet Dupuy from Visor, which I'm going to go into a little bit later as well. And in 2016, around that time, I went on a course by a guy called Dr. John DeMartini. And he was an absolutely fascinating person that I got to immerse myself for 2 days in his breakthrough experience course. And one of the things that I retained from that is this wheel of wellness of essentially, you can just imagine that we all know a person who is rich and miserable. So rich alone isn't a guarantee of a happy life, or even if someone is super super focused on wellness, the in the physical and mental or something, but then their finances are an absolute mess, then they can't really be happy. So the wheel of seven means that you have to have mastery in all of these different seven aspects of life, and it'd be physical, social, financial, vocational, familial, spiritual, and mental. And if you don't have relative mastery in all of them or some of them, then that means that you have to be managed by some sort of a disaster in some of them. And that's kind of how life keeps us in check. And that's a pretty brutal wheel, because for the most part, when you really go to evaluate how many of these sectors do you have mastery in, quite often people can't muster one. And that's a sort of, when we're eating popcorn and watching Netflix and whatever, instead of learning mastery of all of these different kinds of things, that's what it's going to cost us. It's the different disasters if we don't focus on improving ourselves constantly. And some statistics that I think are very fascinating for people to learn, especially if art and healing are in any way of interest, that in the Cedar Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, they have a 4,000 artwork collection. I think it's a few $1 billion worth altogether, because you get tax breaks if you donate art to hospitals in America. And, that they showed that 80% of patients and visitors felt that the art inside of the hospital really help them in these times of crisis, in this clinical setting that you usually are in a hospital. So 80% is a staggering number. And John Hopkins, when they incorporated art into their architecture, the studies show that 15% improvement in overall patient satisfaction and 25% reduction in reported stress. So this is my process. This is kind of how I started. I was a filmmaker. I had a production company for a decade, but then I jumped on to making art this way, that I started body painting and utilizing my skills as a hypnotherapist to help people go through these processes and photograph the whole thing as they went through whatever it is, part of their story and what we wanted to express. And I learned this method of looking at the world a little bit through Ken Wilber, who's the father of integral art. So I was at the beginning, well, not necessarily beginning for integral art, but I was certainly a part of the integral art movement, looking at the whole humanity and our story in a holistic kind of way from multiple different angles. Maybe the wheel of wellness, the sector of seven, was also a part of it. But this is a Bollywood actress called Veena Malik. And when we released this presentation of what we did, was essentially body painting and photography and Photoshop and putting it together and animating them. When we put it out there in 2013 with digital art, we reached about 300 million people just with legacy media alone. We didn't know what the virality of that project was, but it was all about this consciousness expansion and building bridges, even though the media thought that this was something to potentially to do with pouring petrol over fire or being deliberately controversial. and that was not the point at all. It was to already in a polarizing world back then to try and figure out what was similar in between men and women, Pakistan and Finland, and all of these different spiritual traditions that we have all across the world. The idea was to try and find unity when most others were focused on just how different we are in all these different kinds of things and who we should be at war with in one way or another. And an organism at war with itself is kind of doomed, and we've only, of course, seen it get worse from there. And I'll touch upon the rage algorithm a little bit with the Brittany Kaiser project slightly later. Yeah, this was the missing slide. So stress reduction, that Cleveland Clinic found that 60% of patients reported a decrease in stress levels due to hospital art installations, and pain reduction. That research published in the Journal of Pain and Symptom Management showed that patients exposed to visual art reported 20% reduction in pain. Anxiety, Journal of Clinical Nursing demonstrated that 73% of patients who viewed nature art experienced a significant reduction in anxiety. And actually, patients were in the hospitals 21% shorter if they experienced art whilst they were there. And those are staggering numbers that they're significant to actually helping people heal. And it's kind of obvious that if you've been in a hospital, that if you only have these clinical white walls, that they're not really great conduits for you to feel well or better. But as Elsa mentioned at the beginning, because my artworks resulted into digital originals, I was early to the crypto art movement. That I tweeted in January 2016 that I'll be accepting Bitcoin for my artworks. And once I really realized what Bitcoin was and what problems it was trying to solve, the reason why I came to make crypto art to begin with was to heal the monetary system. Because I realized that back then, that if we don't fix the money system as it is, then it's going to lead to further polarization and bad behavior as it has. And of course, now the right and the left and the different governments and whoever are at each other's throats, whereas the actual focus should be to fix the money system itself to begin with, or otherwise it's just going to keep getting worse. But that's why I came to do crypto art to begin with, not to tell the story of decentralization, as well as utilize the technology. And that's how I defined what crypto art is. And it's, of course, been watered down since quite for a multitude of different reasons. But all of this put together, I'm starting to call neo-Renaissance art. And I'm working with Brittany Kaiser, the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower. Her Great Hack documentary on Netflix has about 1 billion views. And of course, her data activism and blockchain activism is quite inspiring for her to not only help people understand why their data is precious, why they should take good care of it, and how to empower themselves through it. So, this particular project that we're doing is about healing data, I suppose. And this is her in my studio in Helsinki some time ago when we were capturing her life story with a multitude of different things, from virtual reality to video cameras to whatever. And then we're going to find different presentations with a team in Egypt. We're going to be putting this together in order to showcase to people of what data ownership and digital art ownership in this case as well is going to help people understand what's valuable about it. This is another one of those Vina Malik projects, images that I made actually a little bit later after the release of the project. And I wanted to show you this because this is a breathing exercise. It's an artwork, but the way that I put it together is that it's a digital original, then it's printed, I painted on top of it, and then it's put into these gorgeous wooden frames. But when you scan it with your mobile phone, what happens is that this animation opens. So the symbol in the center is the symbol of transcendence as well as air. And the idea is that those particles that were coming towards you and going away from you is that you breathe with the artwork 4 seconds in, you hold for 4 seconds, and then you breathe out 4 seconds, you hold for four, and you keep repeating that process, and it'll actually change your consciousness and calm your nervous system if you interact with that artwork in this particular way. So this is what it looks like when you scan it with your phone and interact with it in the physical world, and the virtual and the physical kind of blend together in this nice kind of way.
Sorry, can I ask
Sure.
about the previous one? What
Yeah.
kind of lens was used for scanning? Mask or something?
The app is called Artivive. But essentially, I mean, I used a bunch of different technologies. I used a Hasselblad
Mm-hmm.
camera, my own Canon, to capture the paintings, and it's Photoshop, and then it's After Effects mostly that did the animation
Yeah,
side of
yeah.
it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
called a
Okay,
universal invitation
thank
because
you.
also the artwork is really about how we're, as humans, we're very obsessed with status and wealth and all of these different kinds of things, and not often do we realize that some of the things that, and money is important, I'm not saying that at all, but we often have solutions in front of us that are kind of free and amazing, like meditation or these breathing exercises. They won't cost you anything, and the experiences that you'll get through some of these things are going to be life changing. So it's also simultaneously a kind of a reminder that what art can point to is something that is very, very affordable, even though, maybe the artworks themselves like on the same level as IKEA posters. But it's art is
Mm-hmm.
valuable primarily and mostly for what it says, not the format or not the status or not the presentations and all of these different kinds of things that we quite often get lost in. We do forget that it's about a communication, and that communication matters. Like, for example, in the NFT craziness, uh, NFTs really are just a fancy receipt, and people were treating the receipt like it was the thing of value itself. And that's, of course, why it was a little bit like the tulip mania and why it crashed and why it needs a complete reboot, and hopefully it does get to have it, because we really have needed the digital receipt technology for a long time, and it's really important. But it's not, it's the most redundant thing that I've been given as an honor, and I do really appreciate it. And it's great that I've been given this NFT Artist of the Year of 23 and these kinds of awards. But essentially, it says Receipt Artist of the Year, and it sounds a little less glamorous. But of course, I get the sentiment of what it is, and I'm greatly honored to have it. But it's still a little bit funny. But yeah, going onward, this is an expansion. Has nothing to do with bodies or anything like that. This is paint and photography and Photoshop, and it's from my Mirrors series. And I remember just looking at the sky as a kid with stars in the sky, and kind of just wondering at the endlessness of the universe. And I've had a lot of different spiritual experiences as life progressed. And I completely understand that some people might think that the spiritual realm is a complete hoax and people just full of ideas and these kinds of things. But once you have these experiences, they truly transform you, and you can't really put that genie back in the bottle after that. And this is a artwork called Dark Diamond that is a little bit reminiscent of the feeling that I got when I looked at the sky. And it was sort of overwhelming to think whether we're alone in the universe, and all of these different kinds of things, and this kind of hyper pattern thing. I wanted to experience that depth in an artwork in a different kind of way, and that's something that is quite dear to me. And this is another one that was made for the Wow Summit, actually. So it's called Wow, made with a similar kind of technique. And here you get to see it in the Art in Space Gallery, which is in Dubai at the Boulevard Crescent. Um, that it's animated to come to life, this artwork, and how different the experience is, and how it transforms the whole of the room when you have something like that as a technology. And you can imagine it being in hospitals or hotels, or you know you can use it, of course, for a variety of different things, from luxury to whatever. But you have like 300 smells that come from the ceiling. There's wind and smoke, and the the floor resonates with the same frequency as the audio, and it's just absolutely magical space. And we don't really, because most people think of digital art as being something like a JPEG, or these buying NFTs or whatever. But again, what's so important about it is what it points to, is what we can now do with digital art that we weren't able to do with oil painting. That's the most exciting thing. It's what it adds to the whole of experience, and how we can transform our living spaces and different things. This is from the Census project. After my body painting things, I started doing nude shoots with models. So this is a little bit of a convergence of the fashion world, but without the fashion, because a lot of them are professional models. But then going through these healing experiences through NLP practices and others. Usually the sessions last about 6 hours to go through different painful things about childhood or dreams and hopes and all of these different kinds of things. And this is model Yana, who has a fascinating story that I'm not going to go into further here, but we were finding her place of comfort on the inside of her. And she was actually going through physical pain. When we were going through this thing, she had a slid disc in her back, so which was quite familiar to me. So we were trying to find an actual feeling of comfort whilst she was in reality feeling a lot of discomfort. And kind of, I think we managed to find the place. And this is a recording of that moment. And then with that session, I also guided her to go to some of my wellness expert friends who are great at helping with bodily issues. So the model session not only was a psychological exploration for herself, but also something that continued to point her to the direction of where she could find help for those kinds of things that she was experiencing as challenges. This is another model, an alternative model, and this is a little bit more of a brutal story, because when I got to know her in the 1 hour chat session, even before we started working together, she told me that she had pretty brutal relationship with her parents. She didn't want to share any of those details publicly, and she was bullied in school very heavily and raped a couple of times, and just an insane life as a single mom for her child, as a young mom, and a just touching story altogether. And what she said, that she felt like that pain that was inside of her was like a black spider that she couldn't get out of herself. So we mimicked this kind of session where I was playing a particular kind of jungle music from Brazil. She just sort of threw up that spider, both for the stills and the videography. And we haven't made the video work of that yet. But essentially, the whole artwork is a monument to that moment when she decided to oust that pain from inside of her and really turn a new leaf, and kind of get into a new direction. And it was such a thing to see her show up as the real person she was, that she had the courage after that to become fully present in that. And then I'm increasingly starting to use artificial intelligence in order to animate some of them to come to life, as well as the animation side that we're going to do with a professional animator. Some of them are now on Bitcoin, so ordinals. We started inscribing them on the mother chain. And I'm excited about that, because it's actually helping a lot of the issues that we had in the early days of NFTs. But in the process of putting some of these on the blockchain, I realized that if I would have just jumped from a successful film career to another career over 16 years ago, and won some awards and gone to different countries, moved countries due to the job, and kind of made these deals and all of the things that I'd done, that with ChatGPT, we came to the conclusion that it's cost me around $3.2 million in order to make the approximately 600 digital original artworks that I've made over the last 17 years. So that's kind of where I feel a lot of the value of this artwork also comes from. And now we go a little bit as we are in virtual reality, to kind of go into wellness and virtual reality and art. That VR and similar technologies have been proven to reduce chronic pain and improve mental well-being, making them valuable additions to wellness practices. That once this interface really starts becoming more and more affordable, you can have them in hospital settings and gallery settings, wherever, for people to have more profound experiences. And this is the relevance of spatial altogether. Also, as that the digital spaces that we inhabit and what we're going to be doing with this stuff is really starting to matter in a different kind of way as well. And here's something, because with spatial, for example, I can build a lot of my own things. But I'll show another metaverse that we're building with Asvoria at the moment, because you guys are not competition, because this is something that I can't personally influence at all inside of this world. So in that previous thing, there's a gallery inside of that pyramid, one in that ball and chain thing that is above it, and then a huge gallery that is above it in this floating rock. This gallery that is on the courtyard, so to speak, and one underneath the ground as well. So it's probably the largest gallery complex ever built in the virtual reality for a singular artist, and this is what we're doing. But I'm so excited about building that stuff, because I can present all of the different aspects of my career and kind of this world in the virtual in this kind of way, and that's why it's super cool. But I can't do anything. Everything has to be done by coders, and people costs a lot of money to make, so it's completely different from spatial, where I can actually build my own space in a different way. In Dubai in specific, one thing that we've been building for the last 4 years is with Dr. Marwan
What?
Al Zarouni. With Dr. Marwan, we're building these art cars in Dubai. You get the picture from that one. And it's to make Dubai more beautiful, because beauty is a part of healing altogether. And it's a big focus for me, beauty in all different kinds of iterations. And truth is very closely related to it. And Neurovisor is this mind spa device by Garnet Dupuy, who I met at the Finnish biohacking event in 2022. And we started throwing ideas of what it is that we could do together in with his device as well as wellness. And that's coming in 2026. And for the artists in the audience or the creatives, I wanted to have a couple of things towards the end now of this presentation that are potentially quite useful, because today we're quite often asked to present as companies or brands at the very least. And for in my particular case, it's something that I struggle with quite a bit because my name is VESA, and that's me as an artist. But VESA is also the name of my company, VESA Digital. So if you start to present yourself as a brand, then you quite easily censor yourself out of a lot of the very human, whether it's to do with rage or to do with something of the uglier side of humanity. And art is one of those tools that we actually do purge some of that stuff out of us with. And much like it, in the terms of a public intellectual, we let them think for us. An artist is someone who sees and feels for us and kind of presents these visions that are not always politically correct. So that's a particularly tricky thing that us artists have to now do. And this presenting as a brand comes with a natural kind of self censorship thing and blanding what it is that we feel or say because it needs to fit a commercial agenda or work with companies and these kinds of things. And I'm always happy to kind of meet companies or collaborators halfway, but this is in dangerous territory for artists because we learn through Cambridge Analytica things and now what's been going on in society that for some reason rage was the most rewarding thing on algorithms and how people got engagement and how the left versus right or women versus men and whatever versus whoever you can insert your favorite thing there, that's the thing that kept us most hooked. And of course it's now disemboweling societies all across the world because of this kind of thing, but we see very little art about what's really going on, what we witness in social media, because essentially it's art a lot of the time has become this elite affair and it's become this kind of brand presentation as opposed to doing its real job. And I'm just presenting what is the actual mission of art. Why do we make it to begin with? Is why we have what we have to return to find the true value in it and kind of get rid of this imposter syndrome that often even very successful artists have. And I have a theory about why that happens. Of course, it's important to study all the Rumis and the Da Vinci's and the poets and the masters and those kinds of things, but it's also something that we've forgotten in art, that we have different kinds of masters, from Jesus to Krishna to Buddha to Muhammad, these rich spiritual traditions that art used to be grounded in for thousands and thousands of years that we've increasingly lost now in global contemporary culture. And I think the archetype of the thief is quite close to artists because we take photographs of nature or people or utilize paint made by others or technology by others, and we remix reality and we take concepts from others, and sometimes we don't credit where we took that from, actually most often not. And talking about spirituality in art has become quite the taboo, let alone God. I think if we just take and don't give credit to creation or the creator, if that's your preferred way of saying that, then we feel like thieves. And I think a lot of the time, that's really the essence of our problems, whether you go to the healing or you go to industry. If you're just kind of pillaging and taking from the ground and not paying homage or respect to what you're interacting with, that can lead us astray quite a bit. So wrestling with these masters is the thing that killed the imposter syndrome in me, because I know my place in the universe now. And the ego games and those different kinds of things that often hold us captive in a negative kind of sense, they start to get some breathing space once you ground yourself in something like the transcendent as best you can, because it's, of course, a long wrestling match. But through all of this, I'm building a community of wellness, of doctors and meditators and hypnotherapists and all different kinds of people, in order for those who come and interact with me and buy my art or become subjects of my art, or collaborative companies or whatever. I'm aiming to build ultimately a platform of wellness altogether, where these people and experts are part of it in a very organized way, so that we get to really help this whole thing of wellness altogether. And this is my son, 7 months old, and my wife. So Yellow is joined us. That's a big reason why we're back home in Finland. This sentence, love conquers all the rages, all the different polarizations or whatever it is, loves the medicine. And it's precisely because you can't easily measure creativity in a spreadsheet that you can elevate beyond it. And yeah, that's me.
Yeah, wow, thank you. Thank you. It's so deep immersion. So, and another thank you for your personal story with your childhood, etc. It makes sense, and I think that's really important to share, especially in your context, art healing process. So I wanted to say that I liked this idea with preparing the broken things, and it's about beauty vandalism and about this healing process that you mentioned, and that is going through all your works. I wanted to ask the audience to prepare their questions to write them in the chat or ask them a little later. We have not so much time, but I wanted to ask you about working with global and local communities. The time when you lived in Dubai. So you said about taboo in art, and we know that MENA is a region with a lot of taboo. Personally, you had a series of works with nude shots. How was the reaction from global
Oh, yeah.
audience and MENA audience? Was it different?
Well, every region
Yeah.
have their different kinds of things, and in Dubai and UAE, it was just obvious that I'm not going to showcase that side of my work. There are some of those body painting images that were appropriate to show. That in Art Dubai and those kinds of places, and we made sure that it wasn't considered something that was polarizing, and of course that was very very important to me. But funnily enough, the religious themes and talking about God and things like that, I was able to do very easily in the UAE. Whereas if I bring that stuff up in most places in the West, I'm looked at like a freak. So the spiritual side, in one way, is actually a lot more free and more hospitable in the UAE than it is in many other places. That's a little bit about being a nomad. And this kind of a lifestyle is that you're a guest in someone else's house, and you want to respect their rules. And then, of course,
Mhm.
you also want to present what it is that you have to contribute to the world. So it's always a little bit of a push and pull. But for the most part, there's room for all of us here, and especially in these kinds of things, in the metaverse presentations and in the internet, things get blurred out because the country lines aren't so much the issue here. It's more just on the internet I feel quite free to say what it is that I have to say.
Yeah, yeah. What about creative energy there in Dubai? What makes it unique compared to Western art ecosystems? As we know, Arabic art, there are a lot of calligraphy included and some symbols, etc. In some religions, it's even forbidden to paint live creatures. My question is mostly about creative energy, how it's different from the Western art ecosystems, and what you got from this culture, what inspired your practice.
Well, it started from a different place. It was I was invited to come visit for the first time when the pandemic had already hit, and we were in 2020, and Anita Kalergis, aka Crypto Granny, invited me over, and my first actual meeting in Dubai was with Dr. Marwan. And from that first meeting, I presented him the idea of the art cars, and he just took to it, and then we've been working on that project ever since. So what was exciting about it is the kind of energy and the forward thinking and the entrepreneurial spirit and the kind of mentality that things are possible, and it's such a futuristic city. Everything is so new, and it's driven to a crazy degree, as opposed to, for example, something like Finland is technology oriented, and sure, there's a push towards the future, but it's a completely different vibe. And I found it exciting and somewhat resemblant of American culture as well, because I grew up with American pop culture, and especially in the early days of crypto art, I went a
Mhm.
lot to Miami and Las Vegas and built projects there, and it's a different cultural can-do mentality, and that's something that I really do enjoy about it.
Thank you. That makes sense. So, and I wanted to ask you about the crypto art and cultural currency. As someone who's been involved in the crypto art space from the beginning, how have you seen it evolve? What excites or concerns you about where it's going?
That's a great question. I'm quite concerned about the general direction of it. Bitcoin and Bitcoiners have remained quite the same, even though it's with digital art, it's a little bit sometimes hard to, if you're familiar with the term of maxis, as in Bitcoin maxi, as in nothing else is in existence than Bitcoin. And a lot of those guys, it's such thick irony that the first proper digital coin community of the world will look at everything that is digital art as a scam. So they need to have it as a physical, even though it's a reproduction of the digital original, or otherwise it's a scam. I say that very lovingly to them because I understand what they're up against with these multitudes of different kinds of coins that are let's say less valuable in their propositions than Bitcoin is. But there's some irony to it that the digital coin people look down on the digital art people a little bit. But then you get to the craziness of the meme coins and what's going on with that, and the kind of remix culture and those kinds of things. And let's say the first 4 years of being inside of the space, I witnessed a lot of exciting projects being built all the time that were of substantial value in a sense that they were all trying to solve problems all the time. And then increasingly now it's become this sort of, Trump coin, or, whatever millionth dog coin, or dog now with seventh hat, or you know these kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things that I do find it very difficult to take any of that stuff seriously. And I do understand that memes are a big part of culture, but it's mostly just a lot of the space is very irrecognizable to me at this moment in time. And I suppose that's also why I'm pivoting a lot more to kind of brand all that it is that I do to have a grounding in wellness. Because if it doesn't really go well with the theme of wellness, then I'm probably not into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's your stone that you always care for. What's going on with the NFT art market right now, in your opinion? A loud silence asked. There is often tension between preserving cultural heritage and embracing disruptive technologies like NFT and immersive tools. And how do you see artists in the region navigating this balance? So we have the Museum of Future, we have Art Dubai with really great projects, and you have experience in it. What's happening with NFT market, in your opinion?
Well, NFT market is of course really, really struggling still for many reasons, but I think altogether how it works in crypto is that first Bitcoin goes up, and then the altcoins go up traditionally, and then people will have a lot of money, and then they'll play around with art and different kinds of things, or whatever. But now that altcoins haven't really gone up like we suspected, and it was so much about the meme coins and this kind of thing, there's a lot of insecurity as to what's going to be happening with NFTs altogether. And this is why I've never identified really as a I'm a fine artist. I feel that the substance of my work is why
Mm-hmm.
you would collect and why you would come to begin with, and the NFT is a receipt. So if you want the receipt to be in the form of an NFT that you own my artwork and you can collect it, then I'm all for it. Nothing to it, but to say
Mm-hmm.
that my art is in any way reduced in value because something is happening in the NFT market is nonsensical to me. So it's really not about that. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why again
Yeah.
the
So.
focus on what the art is saying and who I am as an artist and what I've been doing for the last 17 years in my career. But of course, the market does play a part to it. I'm just seeing this one question about have you returned to spirituality in your work to address the lack of humanity's connection to nature? Is this an existential quandary you feel humanity is facing in this moment in history? For me personally, I've read a lot during the last year. Every morning, I've started my day with reading the Bhagavad Gita, and it's of course quite a different take on the majority of the different religions because it's got reincarnation as a part of it, and many other things that are profound. But it's a monotheism kind of way of looking at life, so that Krishna is the Godhead. but essentially what it's left me with is this more of a matrix-like thing, that the whole of the material existence is Maya, illusion. So yes, our connection to nature has been eroding, and there's a certain amount of issues that come with that. But if you really take to heart what the Gita is presenting, then that means that nature is also illusion. And it's just a different kind of thing about the material existence of Maya. And in one way, the quote unquote faker the world gets, the more easy it's actually to see beyond the veil to transcendent or to the Godhead as well. So, but certainly, when I walk in nature and I interact with it, I feel a different kind of wellness than I do when I'm inside of some concrete walls, obviously. So there's sides and sides, but yeah,
Mm.
maybe that answers the question.
Yeah, it makes sense. So coming back to commercial things, there is a strong spiritual undertone in your pieces, and I'd like to ask about balancing this hyper commercial landscape of Web3, NFT, and maybe some great and big events. I don't mean Art Dubai, of course, that's a really important thing, but I'm asking about social media mostly, how not to lose yourself in this commercial landscape.
For reason or another, my social media has always been very unenergized, even though I've put a lot of effort to it. For some reason, my social media doesn't get a lot of interactions, neither on X or Instagram or whatever. So that's not tough for me to not lose myself, even though I'm sometimes upset that it's seemingly easy for many other artists, which with what I think is considerably less effort, to be very successful on social media than myself. But then, the positive side is that I don't lose myself in it. With regards to the commercial aspect of things, art is a really, 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 really difficult game. If you do it as a living, like I do, then it does take a substantial amount of your life force to focus on it in order to maintain being an artist. So I haven't certainly figured that out, and especially because I haven't been embraced by a lot of the art institution circuits or the grants or these kinds of things. I've always had to be very, very creative in order to just maintain a roof on my head. Luckily, through crypto art, it became a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's really hard sometimes to keep the ground. And Moonlight says, "Thank you for sharing your personal story. It's very inspiring. What helped you the most in not giving up on your dream of being an artist?" And I wanted also to combine it with my question: what advice would you give to artists just entering this space? How could you support them? I mean, verbally.
Sure. I mean, what maintained, there's a word sisu in Finnish, and it means grit, essentially. A little bit more than that, but it's a cultural word in Finland for really maintaining in the face of adversity. And that's a part of it. My family is a part of it. But most importantly, I think I am an artist. I was born an artist. It's in me. I have to do it. It's not like it's an option. So again, this whole idea that art is luxury, it's never been that for me at all. Even though I understand the connection to it, and why societies often develop into that direction of thinking that art is luxury. But for the most part, for quote unquote real artists, they don't have an opportunity. It's the opportunity. The alternative is basically feels like that you're asked to die while you're alive. So I haven't died yet. Maybe maybe that helps. What was the second part of the question? Oh, well, words for artists entering the space.
Yeah, the question of Moonlight was what helped you, and my question was like what advice would you give? And I see also the question by Sandy Ed, any advice for the creators seeking financial for their projects? I would just add some knowledge help, curating or something. Are there any advices you could give on this point?
Well, firstly, to for those artists or creatives wanting to come into the blockchain art space, I would say go study documentaries on Bitcoin and or listen to talks by Andres Antonopoulos, or some of the OGs of the space who really tell the story of Bitcoin and why it's important and what problems it solves, and then go from there to understanding the blockchain space. Because if you just come to crypto and say, well, I want some money, uh, you know that's that's everyone,
Yeah.
for the most part. But then you don't really offer any solutions, you don't really have any insight, you don't have kind of a way to interact with the culture because you don't really understand it. And I suppose that's the majority of the culture now. The majority of crypto culture don't really know what it's about. They just came for the money, and that's a huge problem. So learn the basics, learn of what it's about, and then you will find quite easily potentially an angle of what you have to say about it, or what you have to contribute to it, or how you can utilize the technology, and then it'll come naturally. So if you try and do it the other way around, hey, I need money, which is every one of us, nearly, from the 8 billion people on the planet, then you're kind of climbing a tree with your butt up ahead, and it's not going to be very easy. So ultimately, if you do the work of learning what it is, that's easier than the other way around.
Yeah, nowadays we also have some chats and we can ask for help with searching for some organizations or institutions that help the young artists, etc. And I wanted to ask one more question about the MENA region. You've been living there for a long time, and what potential do you see for this region to shape the global narrative of crypto art and metaverse? And there is some cultural nuance of this region or some misconceptions or blind spots you've noticed like globally, but that could be uncovered.
Yeah, that's another brilliant question, and I'm trying to feel out what the best way to kind of put it all is. That well, first of all, I think that the region has unlimited potential of interacting with the future in art and these kinds of things that I was saying. I think due to how it's developed, and UAE is a young country, and it was just a desert just a while ago, and it's made this miracle of a pearl of the Middle East to be there. It's safe and amazing, futuristic, and all experimenting with governance and all of these different kinds of things. But art is something that develops over time. And one thing that I did notice in the region a little bit is that, and I understand why it is that the way that it is, because there's so many, especially in Dubai, because 90% of people are expats. Most people come there to chase a dream and make money and these kinds of things, and they're not so focused in buying art. So in terms of interacting with artists, the language of art and learning it is important to even just for the artist to feel welcome to be a part of the emergent culture. But the most important thing in the eyes of the global culture, I think, is to cultivate a culture of collectors, that really people focus on financially purchasing the works that people present there, and when they come from all over the place, and really put money in the art so that the artists can live. Dubai, for example, is a very expensive place to be. You can only do so much with all of these different amazing opportunities of promotion and all whatever. But ultimately, all of us, when we go to the grocery store, none of us get the food with exposure. So that's a little bit of the loving nudge that I would say that is something that definitely needs to have a big focus on the sustainability part of artists interacting with the region. But all the other things are absolutely in place in order for the whole place to thrive like crazy.
Yeah, thank you. That's it. And that's true. Living in Dubai can make you promote yourself, but at the same time, that's really expensive. There are a lot of opportunities, but yeah, you should just grab them or something.
Many artists were saying that they
Yeah.
kind of they come to Dubai to promote themselves, but they don't come there
Mm-hmm.
with an idea that they're going to sell in Dubai. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really quite a critical thing for local culture to turn around, because it's not sustainable for great development of the region in this kind of way. And I would love to see it thrive more, but this is the kind of down low talk in between artists that is happening a lot. And it really can be shifted around quite fast. And with that, there's going to be an outpouring of talent to the region to such degree that it's going to be miraculous.
Yeah, sure. So I see, I think the last question in the chat. If you have more, you can write them in chat or unmute yourself and speak it out. Halidond asks, so you are saying this is a simulated experience, then why does art serve your purpose as opposed to reading Buddha? I suggest a book, The Art of Being Posthuman, by philosopher Francesca Ferranda.
Okay, thanks for the question. I'll certainly have a look at. I'll actually even copy the. What is it? I mean, if my artworks point to the transcendent as opposed to maybe nature or point to some status game or whatever it is, then I think I'm doing it's doing its part in the legacy of literature or art or whatever that has been always pointing to that. So those who might feel resonant with it can find their way to it in a multitude of different kinds of forms. So essentially, what you're asking is that is there room for transcendent art, or is it pointless? And I would say it's as relevant to have art about the transcendent as it is to have texts about it, or churches, or to anything that points to the same direction. It's as relevant and probably more powerful than many other forms in order to point to it. So I would say that there's a grand point to doing it, and I wish I saw more of it, because in the global circuit of let's say the art fairs and galleries and things like that, you don't really see it, even though our history for thousands and thousands of years is embedded in that, from the mosques to the churches to the different monuments built for about those kinds of subjects for as long as we have had humanity. And for now, all of a sudden, for a few decades, it's become uncool to sort of say anything about that. And I think that's why we have this imposter syndrome as a general culture. I think this is why we feel that it's all fake. And ironically, the transcendent is the realest thing about us.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this book, The Art of Being Posthuman. I think it's worth reading. I don't see any other questions in the chat. We are going to finish.
Yeah, I think that was a
Yeah,
great place
yeah,
to end.
thank you.
If I may just
Thank
say,
you.
I'm really grateful that you guys joined and especially stayed all the way through all the ramblings of of art and wellness and these questions. I'm really. It's great that you were here. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for participating. And you can find me on socials at Art by VESA.
Yeah, yeah, we have bubbles here, so you can use it and follow them. So yeah, thank you so much, Vesa, for this classic-layered and fearless conversation, and thank you for sharing the presentation. It was so great immersion, and that's cool that you prepared some videos and even some personal photos. That's amazing. So, and from ancient codes to blockchain experiments, you've shown us how creativity can transcend time and medium. To everyone who joined us here in Metaverse, thank you for being present, engaged, and curious. Thank you for your questions. And a quick note about who we are. Inloco Gallery is Mena's urban contemporary art pioneer. So we work with street art and fresh talents, and also we have metaverse spaces here, and it's initiative based in Dubai, and we also have spaces here in spatial and VR chat. We explore new media, experimental formats, and voices from the MENA region and beyond here on Inloco MetaTalks. Through talks like this one, virtual worlds and hybrid shows, we invite you to imagine what art can be when it's untethered. If you explore the space, you will find the portals or bubbles of VESA and of Inloco Gallery as well. Yeah, that's it. Until next time, stay bold, stay creative. This was Inloco Sharky signing off with pixels, portals, and peace.